Question you were asked?
Well, I'd simply like to say, my dear lady, that at least children who, for me, children who die of hunger is something that is unbearable, whatever their nationality. It's something that we just cannot countenance. That being said, I never uttered the sentence that you attribute to me. I might have done that, but I didn't. Now, I think concerning Iraq, because in fact, that was what you wanted me to say something about, I think that there is an international organization, there is an international rule, if you like, there is a Security Council, and that there are certain requirements that were laid down, in particular, Resolution 986. And my wish would be is that that resolution be implemented by Iraq, and if it is implemented by Iraq, then yes, I do hope that the sanctions will then be lifted so that there should be fewer small children lacking in the basic requirements. France, yes. Question to President Chirac. Pending the necessary reform of NATO, can France take a new further step to work closer to the military committee of NATO, the military side, as has just been said, and then become a full member? I don't know if everyone has understood or heard the question. I don't know if it has been translated. Yes. No, for the moment, there's not necessary for yet a further step. No, what's important now is that France should talk with its partners about the reform, which in our view is essential, concerning the military organization of the alliance. I'd like to say that from looking at that, and I'm not looking about the past. I mean, the past is the past. It's behind us. But with some vision of the future and the way we see the future, we are, in fact, very close to the thinking of most of our great European partners, both concerning the diagnosis and how we should carry out the reforms. And today I was able to note that this viewpoint was to a very large extent shared by the Americans, and I said, well, I'm delighted at that.
Two questions on the budget, sir. With little sign of life in the budget talks, are your agency heads drawing up plans to lay off or fire employees to grapple with a series of belt-tightening, including resolutions for the rest of the year? And secondly, could there be a hint of a breakthrough in the Speaker's comments today that he's considering a smaller, shorter-lasting tax act?
First, let me say the most hopeful thing that has happened is the statement by the Speaker and Mr. Army and Senator Dole that they intend to seek an extension of the debt limit through the middle of March. And I applaud that. Secondly, there have been a number of statements made which make me believe that the situation is far from gone. I still believe that there is a good chance that if we keep working at it, we can get a balanced budget agreement. And so I think the atmosphere is good. I think the attitude has been basically constructive, and I still am quite hopeful about it. So the answer to your question is no, I do not foresee that there will be mass layoffs and draconian continuing resolutions.
Wouldn't there be a French lady, perhaps? Yeah. We also have lady journalists.
I'd like to know if you believe...
Alors, exprimez-vous en français.
No, well, please speak French. Mr. President, it's a question to President Clinton. I wanted to ask him if he thinks a peace agreement will take place between Syria and Israel before the summer. And do you share the opinion of President Chirac that Lebanon should not have to pay the price of peace? And did you talk about this? And how do you see the future of Lebanon after all this?
Yes, I share the opinion of President Chirac that Lebanon should not be asked to pay the price of the peace agreement. I do not believe that the independence and future of Lebanon should be sacrificed, nor do I think it will be. Now, having said that, I believe that the only satisfactory resolution for Lebanon over the long run is first an agreement between Israel and Syria. I think that a good peace agreement between Israel and Syria will make possible the right kind of future for Lebanon. As to when it will happen, I can't say. That is up to the parties and will be a function of developments within Israel and Syria, as well as the progress of the developments over some very difficult issues in the talks. But I can tell you this. I believe that President Assad is genuinely committed to the right kind of peace, and I believe Prime Minister Peres is genuinely committed to the right kind of peace. And I see their military leaders talking. I see others reaching out, trying to work through the complex issues that are still left to be resolved. And so I'm quite hopeful. But the United States does not impose timetables on others, nor do we project them. All we try to do is to help the parties make peace. The timetable, like everything else, is up to them. Mark, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Mr. President, your spokesman frequently tells us that you don't really feel yourself to be in a campaign mode, and yet tomorrow you're heading off to New Hampshire. Are you trying to have it both ways? And
Sure.
Which of these incarnations?
Doesn't everyone?
Which of these incarnations will we see in New Hampshire tomorrow? And will you answer Senator Dole and the other Republican leaders or candidates who have been saying since the State of the Union that you've been talking from the right but governing to the left?
Well, I think that's self-evidently not true. Of course, you know, sometimes I think it depends on how they define the left. You know, I'm still a little to the left of Attila the Hun, I guess. So, you know, it depends on how they define left and right. But I believe that the most important thing I can do this year is to do my job. And I believe it is my first responsibility. I believe that I can present myself to the American people as a candidate without completely undermining my ability to do my job, and that's what I'm going to try to do. But it would be inappropriate for me not to go to New Hampshire and Iowa before the first caucus and the first primary. And to give an accounting to the people there in a more direct fashion. That's what I'm going to do. I don't know that the arguments I will make and the statements I will make will be that much different than I would if I were here in Washington, but I think they're entitled to see the president show up there, and I'm going to show up. Try to convince him to be for me.
Je voudrais ajouter un point sur...
I'd like to add something on this particular issue, if I may. If I've understood carefully, if the interpretation has been correct, and I've no doubt about that, President Clinton has said that he was to the left of Attila. Well, I didn't feel that this was aimed at me, quite honestly. Whatever certain French journalists may feel about the subject.
I'm to the left of President Chirac. That was good. That was good. Thanks.
I'm French. I have a question for both presidents. My first question to you, Mr. President. It seems, no, in English to the President and then in French to President Chirac.
Non,
Vous êtes trying to have it both
français, il y a une traduction, vous parlez français.
You're trying to have it both ways. I think
D'autant que tous vos amis savent que vous...
Yes, all your friends already know you speak English, so now you speak French, right? Mr. President, it would appear that your understanding, agreement with President Chirac, it seems that you get on with him much more than Mr. Chirac can get on with the Republicans in the Congress who tend to be isolationist. Would you agree with that, and would President Chirac agree with that statement?
Well, I hope he wouldn't agree with that statement because it would not be in France's interest to get involved in our domestic politics. But let me say, The United States, throughout our history, because of our relative geographic isolation from the turbulence that has gripped Europe in the 20th century, that gripped Asia in the 20th century, and before, has often had periods of isolationism. We departed from that at the end of World War II to wage with you in partnership the Cold War. So it should not surprise anyone that at the end of the Cold War, when the imminent threat of a standoff with a nuclear superpower has lessened, that the historic isolationist impulses have reasserted themselves. I think the more important thing is that there is a struggle within both parties not to let that happen. As president, I can speak with one voice. Even though the Republicans may vote together almost all the time in the Congress, that is not possible for them or even for my Democratic allies in the Congress. So I believe one of my most important jobs is to try to persuade Americans of both parties not to return to isolationism, not to abandon our responsibilities to international development, something the President called on the Congress to meet today. And I would like to see this become America's commitment and not a partisan one. And I will say I have received a lot of support from Republicans for my foreign policy initiatives, even though most of them opposed what we were trying to do in Bosnia, for example. And I don't want this to become a partisan issue. I want America to be Europe's partner for peace and democracy and freedom without regard to which party is dominating our politics here. And we are building a new consensus for that, and our building job is not over. But I don't think that that it should become a part of France's concern in terms of the internal politics of the United States.
Effectivement, je me garde.
Yes, I certainly wouldn't wish to interfere in any way in domestic policy of the United States. What I can say is that I get on very well with Bill Clinton. I must add that I also got on very well with George Bush. So you can draw whatever conclusions you like from that.
Mr. President, a lot of people are probably interested in your opinion of the Malcolm Forbes success in the polls, at least, and specifically, how do you see his flat tax? Is this something that you're looking at and something that you would endorse because it certainly appears to have a following out there?
First of all, I don't know because I can't answer the question of why he's doing well, except that I know only what all of you tell me. You know, through the media, I read about it. But I think that he has obviously been able to have a commanding financial lead in advertising his positions, and they're sharply formed and clear. And I think the flat tax has a lot of appeal to a lot of Americans for two reasons. Number one, it seems to be simple, and a lot of people find the tax code complex. It gives them a headache to think about. And number two, it has a superficial fairness, and even if it's not fair, people say the system we got's not fair. So maybe I would trade one unfair system for another one just for more simplicity. And of course, there are some, thirdly, who believe that it would actually promote greater economic growth. I think that's a relatively small number of people. My problem with the flat tax is twofold. Number one, I think that everyone I have seen is projected to run a huge deficit for the United States government. And when you close the gaps that would be necessary to avoid running a deficit, to make it revenue neutral, everyone I have seen raises taxes on Americans with incomes under $100,000. That is a level of unfairness I think is inappropriate. Now, should we do things to simplify the tax code? I think we should. We now have 57% of our filers file the standard deduction at 15%. We're trying to get millions more people filing their federal, state, and local taxes together. We're trying to offer more people the opportunity to file electronically, file over the telephone. There may be other things we can do to make the system both fairer and simpler, but I have seen no flat tax proposal which I could support, because I can't support going back to the early years of the 80s where we have some supply side theory that explodes the deficit. That's what we're paying for now. And I can't, in good conscience, support a system that would raise taxes on all Americans with incomes under $100,000.